In the tantric traditions of Kashmiri Shaivism and Tibetan Buddhism, ultimate reality is understood as both infinite emptiness and infinite fullness or grace, a bit like a cosmic lovemaking between no thing and everything. And so our ego, our personality, usually feels a bit more comfortable with the idea of the fullness, with the loving goodness, with the grace, with the joy, with the bliss, and often because we've spent so much of our lives feeling separate from this depth of ourself. So we tend to run towards it and want it, and we need it. But yet, in order for real transformation, in order for grace to really come alive and open you to deeper dimensions of consciousness, the full potential of what you are, we also have to allow space. We have to befriend and embrace emptiness. There's a beautiful parable in the Zen tradition where in this monastery there is the daily ritual of the monks lining up and going to the Zen master with their rice bowl. The Zen monks deliver up their bowl to the master and he fills it with fresh rice. So it's a symbol of the fresh nourishment, the fresh teaching that comes in every day. But there's one monk in the monastery who keeps coming up to the master with some rice in his bowl from the day before. And the Zen master tolerates this for a while, and then one day he says, "Stop, go and wash out your bowl. How can I give you what you need for today when your bowl is full of yesterday's rice?" So often the bowls of our consciousness, our mind, our heart, is clinging to things we know, is clinging to the familiar. This is so natural because our ego worships what it knows and likes to try and find security through reifying the familiar patterns of mind, familiar ways of being. And so this is why we need to befriend emptiness, and that means looking at our relationship with the void. Often that's a scary word. We tend to associate it with death, and it is a kind of a death, but it's not a bad death. It's not a death to be scared of. It really is allowing to enter into that space where what is not true, what is not ultimately real, the identifications with our story of me that creates and generates so much of our unnecessary suffering can dissolve. So this is akin in the Hindu tradition of the understanding of Shiva, which is the aspect of God, of true nature, that is pure consciousness, that can allow things to dissolve and be liberated within. And we need that support to allow for the genuine transformation that requires a certain kind of death, without which it's just a reshuffling of the same old deck. There's no real surrender. We tend to fear the void, the vast open space, because we tend to identify ourselves as a someone disconnected from the space. So in reality, we're really objectifying ourselves. So often when we play with the classical self-inquiry question, who am I? What comes up is, I am me. And so if we inquire, who is this me? Then what we really see is the sense of me is not a real ontological being ultimately. It's a stream of impressions, of memories, of thoughts, of beliefs, of patterns, of familiar emotional tones, strung together by a sense of self and attached to a body and given a name. And while that's profound in its own right, it forms the outer layer of who and what we are. What we truly are is so much deeper. And so when we start to inquire into our personality structure, our familiar sense of self, what we start to see is that it is limited. It's not bad, it's not wrong, it's just limited. But when we hit the limits of our sense of self, what tends to happen is that we contract and feel somehow ashamed or deficient. And we often interpret this into a storyline of I'm not good enough or there's something wrong with me. And most egos have this kind of storyline that really comes from the sheer fact that our ego is limited. But who you are is so much deeper than this. And so as we allow all of these layers of mind to actually stretch out into the space of emptiness, what we see is the death that happens isn't the death of you, it's just the death of the identification you have with your personality as what you are. And this brings immense freedom, such relief, allows you to take a very deep breath and smile throughout body, heart, and mind. It allows you to take your personality and others' personality so much less seriously. And it allows you to really be present here in life, receptive to the grace that's fresh here and now. And if you notice, the grace of the present moment is always so alive. It's never static. We see in nature that leaves are always blooming afresh. Flowers are always unfolding new. There's constant unfolding that is both birth and maintenance and the dissolving. And so as we open to allow the space, we really befriend the mystery itself. We befriend the silence. We enter into the silence before the song. We're not afraid of the dark before the dawn. We're brought into intimate contact with the purity of our original true nature, which in and of itself is grace. The Sufis say that after fana, which is the annihilation, the dissolving, there is baka, which is existence in God. And so as we befriend the emptiness and we allow ourselves to be brought deeper into the innermost sanctuary of pure being itself, we find that we already are in God, that we are part of God. We always have been. We always will be. And in that we can relax deeply into life. We can be as we are. So much of our energy is freed up. And that's such a blessing.